This is SelfWork, and I'm Dr. Margaret Rutherford. At SelfWork, we'll discuss psychological and emotional issues common in today's world and what to do about them. I'm Dr. Margaret, and SelfWork is a podcast dedicated to you taking just a few minutes today for your own self-work. Welcome back to SelfWork. I'm Dr. Margaret Rutherford, and I'm so glad you're here. I started SelfWork over 8 years ago in order to extend the walls of my practice to those of you who might already be very interested in all kinds of psychological information. Maybe you're in therapy. To those of you who are looking for answers, maybe with a relationship problem or your own individual struggles. But to those of you who also might be just a bit skeptic about this whole mental health thing. But in listening here, maybe you'll find some good old common sense advice that'll make sense to you. You know, as TikTok has taken over the world of social media throughout the last few years, there are a lot of things going on psychologically, and it's become very, very popular. But again, many people are writing that it also can be harmful. Users have begun sharing their personal experiences with mental health struggles, coping mechanisms, and diagnoses. But while it's interesting to hear these stories, it's also a fear and an actual just concern that it actually might be detrimental to viewers' mental health in the long run. For example, on Instagram, they have people actually who have anorexia talking to young girls, especially about how they can eat less and become even more anorexic. Dr. Sanam Hafiz, our guest for today, breaks down some of the most prevalent trends on self-work. She's a New York-based licensed clinical psychologist and the founder and clinical director of Comprehensive Consultation Psychological Services. She's also directed most of her training and attention to the field of neuropsychology, which actually is the field of the study of the brain and psychological experiences. She's given her expertise on lots of outlets in New York City and frequently appears on CNN, and she used to appear on Dr. Oz a lot, if you were a fan of his. But today she's talking about some of these syndromes or actual behaviors that are the outcome of some of the teachings or just some of the practices you have to have when you make TikTok and Snapchat and Instagram such a huge focus in your life, with people with 7 and 8 hours on social media in a day or even longer. Have you ever heard of glowing up or bed rotting or lucky girl syndrome? We're going to be talking about that today on SelfWork. But before we get to that, here's a message from AG1, used to be called Athletic Greens, that I now see is being advertised all over the place as more and more people learn about its great, great benefits for your health and well-being. Our next partner is AG1, the daily foundational nutrition supplement that supports whole body health. I drink it literally every day. I gave AG1 a try because I wanted a single solution that supports my entire body and covers my nutritional bases every day. I wanted better gut health, a boost in energy, immune system support. I take it in the morning before starting my day, and I make sure and leave it out for my husband because he tends to forget. I love knowing that I'm starting my day so incredibly well, and I wouldn't change a thing because it's really helped me the last 2 or 3 years I've taken it. And here's a fact. Since 2010, they've improved their formula 52 times in the pursuit of making this nutrition supplement possible and the best it can be. So if you want to take ownership of your health, it starts with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/selfwork, and that's a new link, drinkag1.com/selfwork. Check it out. And now, let me introduce you to Dr. Sanam Hafiz. She is delightful. Hi, Sanam. It's nice to meet you as well.
Yeah.
I just thought it was very interesting. Your publicity people sent over a lot of the things, and I thought, gosh, she talks about a lot of different issues. But I had never had anyone on SelfWork talk about some of these prevalent trends for social media. We've talked about the dangers of social media and that kind of thing, but I was fascinated by some of these things that you wanted to talk about because they they encapsulate, I think, what maybe even younger listeners might want to hear, these sort of trends that are happening and the dangers of such, and probably the positives, the things that might be affirming as well. So I would love for you to talk about that.
Yes. So for instance, my feed is flooded with news because I follow the news.
Mm-hmm.
It's flooded with, activists of different kinds, mostly political. I'm very much into, knowing what's happening on the political scene,
Mm-hmm.
some travel stuff, some biohacking stuff. I'm very big on, self-care and, basically how to live healthier, longer, some medical stuff, maybe some mental health. I do so much of my own mental health. I don't necessarily need to follow that,
Yeah,
but it makes its way over there. But it's very interesting. I love the idea of working on or teaching people how to work on relationships and friendships. And I follow a lot of that. And I like a lot of the relationship stuff. I like it. I repost it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm a married woman, fairly happy married woman. I've been getting apps for dating websites because the algorithm is designed in such a way that it thinks I'm a single woman, a heartbroken woman who needs to date. So Instagram thought, hey, let's send her some dating websites. So,
oh, interesting.
But I also just wanted to put out there that I think for a lot of people, when they start reading something on the internet, if it's something that may be dark or unhealthy for you, mm-hmm. the social media algorithm doesn't help because it sends you more of that stuff. Wow. And now you start being convinced of the things that you maybe don't want to be convinced about. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It's a bit mm-hmm. of a slippery slope, which is very interesting. And I just realized this in the last couple of days. I said, why am I getting this? Like, what did I do? And I realized I was looking or reading a lot of the relationship stuff. So, and yes, so to go back to your actual question that I misunderstood was, yes, I think that social media, just being on that screen an excessive amount of time mm-hmm. is just, even if you're reading good stuff, even if you're reading the news, even if you're just educating yourself, is linked to a significantly higher level of depression and anxiety, for sure. Mm-hmm. And if you're younger, you're more impressionable, you're easily influenced, especially young girls. There is a huge pandemic that we're not talking about enough.
Mm-hmm. And that, to be clear, that for you is the negative psychological harmful effects of social media and screen time. We've known this about the kids for a long time, but the CDC is reporting the highest number of suicidal attempts or ideation in young girls more than ever. And if you ever, I know nothing about filters and the real filters, like swiping. I always joke that swiping right on something and getting the Paris filter on Instagram is my idea of, looking better. But there are people who go in and Photoshop everything about themselves. And these kids have all the time to do that. But when you go look in the mirror, you're not going to like what you see because it looks nothing like that image you've been putting up. And you're afraid to meet people because you're afraid to disappoint them, right? So it's like a vicious cycle that social media is propagating. Listen, social media has done some incredible things. I think, it's brought people together. It puts a lot of awareness out there. It gives us a lot of information in an entertaining, kind of entertaining somewhat format. But the downsides of not being able to disconnect from it are really lethal, right. Psychologically from mental health standpoint. Yes. And you're a neuropsychologist as well. So what kind of effect does that have on our brains?
So, I've done a lot of talking and writing about this stuff. So there is a plethora of research on people who game, on a video game, gaming. And it sounds ridiculous to normal people who don't game that they're gamers who will put on a diaper so they don't have to go to the bathroom because they don't stop. Wow. And of course, there are people who make millions of dollars gaming, right? Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I've talked about is if you're on social media an excessive amount of time, it's similar to gaming, right? It's a constant stimulation. What fMRI studies have found is that people who game excessively, the white matter, the gray matter, the white, the good stuff, the volume in the brain actually atrophies and decreases in volume.
Really?
So is it a wide stretch to say that a kid who's on social media, or even an adult who's on social media, listen, we are declining as you and I talk. Our brain health is declining because that's what happens. We kind of go up during our teenage years and we plateau, and then we start to decline. Our memory, our manual dexterity, our attention. I can tell you I used to devour books, and now I'm like, okay, if I can just find a window where there isn't a distraction, my eyes get fatigued, and I had to get reading glasses, much to my chagrin. So we're spending this time, and unless you're in that perfect little window of cognitive strength, spending that excessive amount of time on social media is absolutely harming your brain. Even if you take out the mental health struggle, even if you ignore the mental health, anxiety, the low self-esteem, not liking how you look, it's still hurting your brain.
Is there a way to rebuild that white matter?
Absolutely. The thing we know is the brain is plastic, right? Neuroplasticity is a real thing. And it, basically has taught us in the last decade or so of research that the brain can do even more than we ever imagined. It can repair. It can, I read a study, it was so interesting, that in traumatic brain injury, one part of the brain that is responsible for something, when it gets injured, another part of the brain that didn't have that job takes over that job till that part of the brain can recover. So the idea of neuroplasticity is that it's never too late. Your brain can expand and become better at what it does, but you have to feed it like every other part of our bodies, right? Sure. Like when we go to the gym, we are blown away by how impressive it is that our bodies can do things that it couldn't do 6 months ago or a year ago. Mm-hmm. Well, the brain's your most valuable muscle, and we don't exercise it. We don't do anything with it. Mm. So, if we can disconnect from our phones, we can put it away in a drawer. If we can, find windows of rest, if we can plug the phone in far away from the bed at night, I think we can do amazing things at recovering. Sometimes my phone gives me a message that says screen time, weekly screen time. It kind of gives you, I think I have it set to that setting, and it tells me, and I'm really sort of upset when I see that there's been a spike in my screen time. Although I must say I use my phone a lot for work. I do a lot of remote work using my phone, and I'm not sure if it counts, but I do a lot of research. I do a lot of emails and text messages for work primarily. And I still feel terrible about it.
I love this list that I got that is all about sort of this false sense of yourself on social media. You were just talking about it, that you can use with face filters. I have a little bit, Zoom asks you, hey, do you want to look just a little bit better? Or you can do the slider way over where I look like somebody I'm not.
Where you look like you're manufactured by AI. Yeah.
And so I have it just a little bit, because it's just, okay, that's my vanity. But you're exactly right. And I'm a 68-year-old woman, but
you look fantastic.
Well, thank you, Zoom. Right?
That's amazing.
But
you need to give me some beauty tips.
But, I will get it in the morning, and especially when I have morning face, I go, oh, this doesn't look at all. But I'm not an impressionable young girl anymore. I've had this face for a long time. I'm pretty comfortable with it. And so, if I were 16 instead of my age, that would be really difficult, I would think. And some of the filters are just funny to me, but I think I can see exactly. I mean, I hated some of the way I looked, when I was younger but you one of the things you talk about is glowing up. I love this because I have a real issue with some of the influencers who tend to use this really simple, all you have to do is do this every day and all of life will come to you. Can you talk about what glowing up is?
Yeah, I have, in the beginning when it started, I didn't quite understand it. So I can kind of see your before and after. You went on a weight loss journey and, you call it a glow up from like 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. You weighed, let's say 300 pounds. You went on a journey of exercise and diet and you want to motivate people, and that's your glow up. Sure. People talk about emotional or psychological glow ups. Again, I have no, malintent or ill feeling about any of that. What I do worry about is that when you're putting that kind of information out there, your viewers, your audience, the people who follow you, who might have significant problems in their emotional health and mental health.
Mm-hmm.
They are taking you, and I see patients who come to me because they were somewhat encouraged by social media. So I know that there are people who really look up to these people to kind of guide them.
Mm-hmm.
And all they see is that snippet of you, which you might have recorded God knows when, after God knows how many takes. And they're thinking, this is what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But when I watch these influencers, the very next day, they're trying something new. And the very next day, they're trying something new because that's how they keep you in. Are you telling me that they're using all of those techniques every single day?
Right.
And having time to make a living, unless social media is their living, and record these videos and have these amazing relationships that they talk about? So it kind of is a paradox to me.
Mm-hmm.
You
mm-hmm.
can't really be journaling every day and also deep breathing and taking long walks and drinking all these concoctions and, spending time with your loved ones without the phone. I don't buy it.
No, I don't either.
So you're telling these people, impressionable young people or people with mental health problems, that's all you have to do. But that's not true because there's no way you're doing all of that.
Mm-mm.
So I think,
and there's I've been a psychologist for 30 years. I've never seen anyone use one thing to do anything. There's a multiplicity there. It's a physical, spiritual, emotional, cognitive, there are all kinds of things that need to sort of align with one another in order for someone to move forward. And so in any really meaningful, consistent way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Exactly. So, think of, sometimes I love, like I said, biohacking and skincare and all that stuff. So some of the people that I follow are good people. I like, like Mark Hyman or people at Harvard. He doesn't actually have David Sinclair. He's a big biohacker. And, I like reading about him. You look at all the things they're doing, and I'm thinking, like, this one guy takes 81 supplements a day, and I'm thinking, what? Gosh. 81 supplements, But sometimes you have to wade through it to get to the stuff, and then I'll go do my own research, and I'll read the, real stuff that's actually out there, empirically proven. But come on, people like you and I are unique in that sense, right? We have people with doctorates. We're used to going to the source. We understand that research can be very muddy. And you can't take that headline for what
you can find what you're looking for.
100%. You can always find. You pick the topic, you'll find someone who published something that's that doesn't necessarily mean it's accurate. So even when I watch these skincare people, and I'm thinking, but last week you were touting this other skincare line. Now you're like, how do you even know it works? You didn't try that for more than 2 days, and sure. You don't know who's paying you for. What and what you're endorsing, and if it's really something that's good. Anyhow, so
I get to go listen to Lewis Howes. I love Lewis. He actually honored me by having me on the program several years ago. But he'll have someone on who says, you should never eat asparagus. And then the other person says, you've got to eat asparagus every day. Yeah. And I wonder what that's like for him, because he literally, he has the School of Greatness podcast and he's done very, very well, but these people are giving such contradictory advice. It's really funny.
Exactly. And I have a lot of people who say, you could do so much more on social media. You could do so much more on social media if you wanted to. I know this one just loves popping in and just these.
Hello.
They left. Latinos.
Hi guys.
Okay. It's Dr. Rutherford saying hi to you guys.
Hi.
They're actually very good, but they try to leave me alone. But it was funny. We did some interviews at the beginning of the pandemic, and CBS, the one with Jane Pauley.
Yes.
The big one.
In the morning. And it's a great
In the morning.
show.
It's got huge viewership. I scheduled it. There were only 5 at the time. So I scheduled it so they'd be in bed. Of course, they didn't go to bed, and they walked right into the interview because one of them ran over the other with like a truck or something. And I was like, I'm so sorry. And the producers left that bit in.
Oh, good.
Because they said, well, this is your life now. Your kids, your animals are going to intrude on your Zooms.
Sure,
just deal with it, figure it out. Yeah.
That's really funny.
15 million people got to see my kids on CBS News. So to go back to what I was saying, that, I think it's very important. So people ask me, why don't you do more? And I say, because I have to be very careful about what I say on social media. I have the responsibility of having a license, and I can't just go out there and say something that gets attention or gets, the kind of clout that social media loves, the attraction, the glamour. I'm a psychologist. This is my entire life's work. I can't just go out there and just say something. And, social media is a bunch of clips, like little sound bites.
Oh, yeah.
You can't give mental health advice in a sound bite. And I can't afford for the wrong audience or the wrong ears to grab something and run with it, and I also, between the kids and a very full practice and all the other things that I do, don't have the time to invest in it. But that's really why I don't do it. Putting up a picture is one thing. Talking about stuff, I feel like for me, it's a great responsibility. I'm sure you feel the same way about your podcast.
I do.
Because not just because you have a podcast, lots of people have podcasts. But if you've been a psychologist for 30 years, I don't even have to guess. A licensed doctoral level psychologist feels the weight of the mental health world on their shoulders. Okay. We want to impact people positively every chance we get. And I see that in my colleagues and my friends. I have some dear friends that I went to graduate school with, and we all feel the same way. And guess what? None of us have any real social media presence.
No.
That's why, right?
I have these people who will contact me. We'll give you thousands of followers, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, that's great, but not really. I'm not into that at all.
No. So
I totally agree with you.
You're a psychologist. I know that whatever I'm saying is resonating with you.
As soon as I get an email from a publicity person and I see the word transformational in a week or transformational, I say, not into it. Sorry. I don't care how many followers you have or whatever.
Yeah.
I love your down to earthness. That's really great. And we can't forget that husband of yours in there. You were listing off the things you needed to pay attention to. We can't forget that husband.
Yeah, of course. Family,
one of the other trends you talked about, bed rotting, which is kind of self-explanatory, face filters, self-diagnosing, glowing up. And the last one you talk about is lucky girl syndrome. And I really thought this one was interesting.
Yeah, I love how false that concept is. You know what I mean? Because initially when that came out, I don't follow any of these trends very closely. I really wasn't on TikTok much. I initially didn't quite understand it. And I know initially I kind of thought to myself, well, I'm a lucky girl. What does that mean? I feel like I'm a lucky girl. I've always felt like I'm a lucky girl. And I wish I could explain to people that let's start with the lucky girl syndrome.
Okay.
Being a lucky girl or a lucky guy is nothing except a mindset, right? It's about accepting your good and bad, accepting that life's going to throw things your way, accepting that you have the power to change what you can change, whether you work toward it, whether you work hard, whether you have, buffers built in, whether it's friends or family, and being able to lean on those people, understanding that falling is a part of life, getting back up is up to you.
Yes.
And so such thing. Yes, I absolutely think that there's some people the luck definitely shines on, and I feel like maybe I have been one of those people. I remember my father who got sick 4 years ago and passed away very, very quickly from a very rare illness. I called my best friend one morning as I was walking to my dad's house. I would drop the kids off and go over and have breakfast with my mom and dad almost every day. And I said to him, I feel like my charmed life is coming to an end. Because the idea of losing my dad was that devastating. I felt like that's it. And it was horrible, but
so sorry.
Thank you. But I've rebuilt my life since then, right? It was about, I immediately said to my mom, my sisters, my kids were very young. I said, we gotta travel again. I took an inordinate amount of time off of work and just traveled. And I said, look, the healing isn't going to be overnight. We're going to have to keep doing these things till one day we're truly laughing again. And yes, we're always going to miss them, but we'll be happy about the life. And since then, I've gotten remarried. I also went through an awful divorce in the same time period. My sister has gotten married. We have a new nephew. I have a bigger family thanks to my husband. And I had this wonderful psychologist who passed away from COVID, unfortunately, that I worked with. And he said, Sanam, that's life. Your table, meaning your table that you eat on, it expands and it contracts. And you just have to enjoy the times when it's bigger. And That's what Lucky Girl is made of. To accept that things are going to be up and down.
And adapt.
And adapt. And you keep working toward, that's it. You just one foot in front of the other. And you just got to keep doing it. Mm-hmm. You know, and I know it's easier said than done, especially for people who are prone to depression or anxiety. But it puts this idea out there that there is lucky in itself denotes a sense of an external locus of control, which you and I both know actually plays a much smaller part in life. You know, yes, can you get struck by a bad disease or sickness? Yeah, that's not up to you. You know, can someone you love dearly pass away? You don't get to control that. But you do get to control how you move forward and how you heal from that pain. And so I don't like a lot of these trends or these very flippant ideas that are out there that give people the impression that what's happening to them is out of their hands. You know, bed rotting, you mentioned earlier. Like staying in bed for, you know, ridiculously prolonged amount of time is a sure way of cementing that depression. Exactly. You know, having the terrible thoughts swirl around and, you know, an object in motion stays in motion. So guess what happens to an object that stays in bed rotting? It stays in bed rotting longer.
I want to make sure people understand you because I lost track a little bit. What you're saying with Lucky Girl Syndrome is that if you believe it enough, it will happen, right?
If you believe it, but also work toward it. You actually have to do the things.
And that's what's true, but that's not Lucky Girl Syndrome. People are saying Lucky Girl Syndrome is that if you just want it, it'll happen if you want it hard enough. Am I reading that correctly?
I guess that's what they're saying. What I'm saying is, yes, that is a big part of it. The optimistic, positive thinking, I think, is huge. I was on vacation telling my sons about the difference between optimism and pessimism. And I said, if you truly envision it and if you really look on the bright side of things, good things just happen to you. I've watched it happen to myself, to other people. I said, but you also have to be mindful that some of us are prone to negative thinking. Some of us, because one of my sons said, oh, I'm just not good at sports, mama, because his twin is like bigger than him. And I said, honey, you can play basketball so much better than you could last year. I see you kicking a ball in soccer and I'm amazed by what you can do. You can't compare yourself to your brother. He's had a growth spurt. You will have your own growth spurt. Right. But the focus on, of course, they're 8-year-old boys, right? So it's all about the sports right now. And so I said, and I explained to them, and for a couple of days, he couldn't remember the word optimism. And he's like, Mama, I want to be that OP word that you said. I want to see the glass half full. And I said, but you can train the brain to do that. I explained the concept of neuroplasticity to my 8-year-old and he got it.
There you go.
He got it. So, I said, I want you to envision good things. And I want you to, even if you must say it to yourself, I can do this. Look at your past successes and say, well, I did that. I know I can do this. It's just going to take maybe a little harder work than, let's say, your brother or someone else. But that's okay. Because there are other things that are going to come to you easy. So we all have to work hard at some things. And then some things come easy to all of us.
And I also think this is resonating with me as far as there's one of my favorite stories about she wasn't my biological grandmother, but she was a grandmother to me. And when I first met her, when she was 84 and I was 24 and she didn't die till she was 104. And she was living in this beautiful apartment and she used to love to sit out on her sun porch and watch the clouds go by because it was all glass walls. Then she moved to a condo kind of thing that was smaller and she had this big bay window and the final place where she ended dying had a tiny window. And I looked at her, I called her Ed, and I said, Ed, I'm so sorry that your window is so small. And she looked at me, Sonam, and said, they are the same clouds.
I love that.
Isn't that a wonderful way of looking at things?
Love that. Absolutely love that. And I sometimes feel that way about the moon. You know, that no matter where you are, no matter how you wake up, how you go to bed, the moon is still yours.
Right.
I love that.
That reminds me of your dinner table analogy that sometimes it's going to get smaller, sometimes it's going to get bigger, but it's what are you focusing on that's important?
Yeah, 100%. Material things, for instance, are going to come and go, right? So having that anchor, jobs are going to go, money's going to go. I've seen people go from living in mansions to tiny little retirement homes or nursing homes. That's aging. You have to accept these things are going to happen to all of us if we're fortunate enough to live that long. Just now when I was in London, in the UK, my uncle and aunt were the only doctors for miles, for towns in a part of a few hours away from London. And they lived in this huge house that I think belonged to the mayor of the town. It's massive. And my aunt died. And then my uncle, of course, they had retired by then. They actually owned their own hospital. And he now lives in a room in a nursing facility, and I thought to myself, wow, that's just life. Mm-hmm. You can go from being this larger than life guy to just ending up, because that's where you're the safest now. He has Alzheimer's and some dementia. And he came to see my mom with his sports jacket on, with his Rotary Pin Club, pin on his lapel, and because he doesn't get to do that anymore.
Right.
But if you can just accept that the important things are the relationships in your life, the people you love, the inner sense of who I am, your identity, I'm somewhat, I have a lot of religious faith or faith in God, let's say. And I know that's not for everyone, but having your faith in God, knowing that there is someone, a power unknown to us that's looking out for you. I think it takes a lot of the pressure off looking a certain way. I was joking recently, as I'm aging, I'm like, my face is falling. Every morning I wake up, I feel like it's falling a little more. But you know what I thought to myself? I'm not the first or the last woman to experience this. This is aging. If I don't learn to love this newer face that I am inheriting, I'm going to be a very sad, unhappy woman, and I don't want to be.
This same woman that I loved so much, named Ed, she said the most important thing to do after you're 90 is to get up in the morning, go into the bathroom, look in the mirror, and say, "Good morning, whoever you are."
Right. I love this woman. I can see why you loved her, yes. Why you adopted her as a grandmother. So, listen, even for someone who purports to understand people and relationships and human emotions and psychology, we all have our challenges, right? Mm-hmm. Accepting that, yes, we all have our weaknesses. We're vain. We, might want to, social media makes you think everyone's vacationing in Europe all the time. It gives people such a false sense of what's out there. Right. And, accepting your struggles as unique and saying, I'm going to work on this the best I can. It'll never be perfect, but I'm going to do what I can. I think that's all the lucky girl syndrome you need.
I think that's a wonderful thing to say. Wonderful to remember. Really astute and also just very gut true.
Yes. Yeah, it feels true. Yeah. And I will say that social media does make you think about things in a different way. Maybe you invest a little more in self-improvement, and maybe at least reflection than maybe if it wasn't there. So that there is the good in that. I can see the good in that.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you don't have a big social media presence, you said, but if people want to read your articles or get to know more about what you do, how would they do that?
So there are a couple of places. I like my Instagram. That's my poison of choice. I do like Instagram.
There you go. Mm-hmm.
And it's simple, Dr. Sanam Hafiz. My website is comprehendthemind.com. We're working on revamping it. So there's more information coming on the website. It's been around for a long time. It just needs to be revised. And if you Google me, you can find a ton of articles that I've written and contributed to over my career.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Keep rocking. You're doing great. Thank you so much.
Okay. Not only is Sanam actually very experienced and intelligent, she is a wonderful, wonderful person, and I'm so glad I got to meet her. I hope you are too. Thanks for listening to SelfWork. As always, please take very good care of yourself, your family, and your community. I'm Dr. Margaret, and this has been SelfWork.